Welcome to the Newtown Big Dreams podcast, an interview-style talk show that's your gateway to the fabulous and fascinating people who relocated to start a new life. Whether you're new to our podcast or your city, our fellow neighbors from across Canada, North America, and the entire English-speaking world share their stories of reaching new horizons and big dreams. So sit back and relax as we navigate in-depth and intimate conversations with entrepreneurs, thought leaders, executives, creatives, and anyone who can share their story about their Newtown big dreams. And now, here's your host, Luke J. Menkes.
So, Deborah, thanks so much for coming over today. I appreciate it. I understand it was your second interview today.
Correct.
So you're very popular on a Sunday. You came to Kelowna in 2006.
Correct.
So tell us the story of how you got here.
Yeah, it's really funny. So I'm originally born and raised in Cape Town, South Africa.
Okay.
And I married a Scotsman. And so I think after we were married for a couple of years and we had our kids, we decided that we wanted to go travel the world with our children, show them a little bit of world.
Yeah.
And so we ended up first briefly in Europe, back to Europe. And then my husband got a job in the Middle East, which we loved, in Dubai. We lived there for 6 years. And then, living in Dubai is kind of like your children are a little bit spoiled because they don't do anything for themselves because there's so much help.
Really?
Yes. And so we decided that we needed to move to get them back into like real life, right?
Right.
So it was basically between Australia and North America. And so when we looked at what it will take to go to either of these continents, I think North America for me was more popular because growing up, I was like always watched movies, and I saw like Vegas and New York and San Francisco and so on. And so I was more drawn to North America. And so we decided that that's where we'll come. But we actually wanted to go to the US really, but it takes longer to get into the US than to Canada.
I see.
And because, we didn't want to wait that long, we just filled in the papers and we got accepted into Canada just like that.
Interesting.
Yes. And so basically in those days, they give you the, the 5-year timeline for you to actually come over. So by the second year, we were like, well, we have to do it now because if we don't do it, we're going to lose this whole application. Yeah. And so we had one friend that I met when I was living in Dubai. And she said to me, well, Kelowna is probably the best place in Canada since you come from the sunshine, the most sunshine and the best weather. And actually, to be honest with you, that's how we ended up in Kelowna.
Wow.
Yeah. And so we came to visit here once only, and then went back to Dubai and then bought a house in Kelowna without seeing it, basically over the internet on the west side. And and the next year, so that was 2006, we packed up our life in Dubai and we moved to Kelowna.
Wow. Did you, were you happy with the house?
The house was okay.
It was okay.
Because it's very old. I mean, some of the houses here are old. Like my house was built in the 70s. So
same with this one.
Yeah.
But they can be in widely different conditions when they're that old.
Correct.
Right?
Our house was okay, actually. And we have a swimming pool as well. So the house was actually not too bad considering, but it was in my standard, living in like one of the best cities in the world.
Yeah.
And coming from that kind of lifestyle, it was a little different.
Yeah.
But the house is good. We still live in the house now.
Wow.
Yes.
Well, then it couldn't have been too bad.
Yeah.
I'm curious to know a little bit more about South Africa and Dubai. So tell us, what are some of the main differences in living between South Africa, Dubai, and Kelowna?
There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Maybe just a few.
Yeah. So basically, I mean, I have to say, the number one thing really that's hugely different for us from living in Cape Town to here is the safety. Okay, so South Africa is beautiful. It's a beautiful country. I was just there a month ago, and I mean it's a beautiful country. But
and
because
you were born
I was born and
there.
raised in Cape Town, but because of all the problems they have there with unemployment, and they obviously did change a government regime 25, 30 years ago, not quite 30 years ago when Mandela became president. after a white government. Mm-hmm. So they've been going through transition, and I think it's tough. You can't change 100 years of history in like 20 years, So there is a lot of unrest and you know what? And so for us raising our children, it was like, okay, it will be better to raise them somewhere where it's a little safer. Mm-hmm. But from day-to-day living, like there isn't really that much difference.
Right.
People are generally the same mostly, and cost of living is probably on par. I think, some things are a little bit more expensive there. Some things, I think labor, like if you just wanted somebody to be your gardener, you'd probably pay 10% of what you're paying here. Do you know what I mean? So those kind of little differences. But as the day-to-day living, I think it's pretty similar.
And Dubai, is it a very strict Muslim?
Yeah, so Dubai was on a different level for us as well because, it is a Muslim state, and it's a very fast life, and the city is so dynamic, and it's just completely different to anywhere else I've ever been. It's not too big, but it is big. Bigger than Kelowna, for example. Right. And also, I have to say, I haven't lived there in 13 years now. So things have changed a lot there. And I remember when we first moved there, they had a 2-lane highway. Now they have 6 lanes or something. Right. And they've built an island, the Palm Island there. And so all that has come up since we've lived there. So I think it's even probably bigger now than when we first lived there. But from my lifestyle that I had there was very, very good. We literally lived 2 minutes across from the ocean, and 2 minutes up the road was the world's only, I think it's a 7-star hotel or something like that, the Burj Al Arab.
Right.
And so, that was my lifestyle. Maybe once a month I'd go for a spa treatment there or go for tea with my friends. Or
yeah. Now, do women, are they required to be covered in public?
So only if you're a local.
Okay.
So it's different to in the Middle East where all women have to be covered. Right. I mean, in Saudi Arabia, where all women have to be covered. Dubai, it's only if you're Muslim, correct. And if you're a local, then you have to get covered up for when you're outside. But people like us, no. We were pretty free. It was so nice. You could, be in your bikini and on the beach.
No problem. And what about alcohol?
So, that is a different story. So alcohol, when we first moved there, you can't buy alcohol except if you go to a hotel or to an established place where they have a license to sell. But later on, my husband actually obtained a license where you can buy alcohol, but there's an amount. You can't go more than let's say $1,000 a month or every 3 months. You can't spend more than that on the alcohol. So it's basically you get a certificate that says you can buy alcohol for up to this amount, something like that.
It's probably not a terrible
And that was years ago. Now I'm not sure if it's still like that, if maybe they changed it. And so there's no liquor stores. You can there are only very few places where you go and, so it wasn't a normal thing to buy alcohol. In actual fact, I want to tell you something really funny.
Yes.
Just a couple of days ago was the first time in my entire life that I opened up a bottle of wine.
Wow. You mean you yourself
myself.
Opened it. I have. You drank wine.
I've had some wine. I'm not a big wine drinker, but I mean, I have never opened up a bottle of wine in my life. And actually, I had to call my daughter to ask her, how do I do this? So the alcohol thing for me in Dubai was because I don't really drink a lot of alcohol, it didn't affect me. But I think it, for some people, they have to get used to it. Yeah. That you can't just go and buy alcohol.
Right. Can't just go off the street.
No. And of course, they also have on-port products and stuff like that. I think it's very limited and you pay extra taxes on it, just like how with alcohol, I think everywhere. But there they tax the alcohol even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So that's very interesting. But we really, truly enjoyed our time there.
Yeah.
Completely lived the high life and loved it. Wonderful. But it's a kind of a bubble, Yeah. And I'm glad that we moved somewhere where our children, they know how to take a bus and, how to do things for themselves.
Right.
I mean, the bedrooms are still a mess, but, because there's nobody to clean it anymore.
Right. Yeah. It's a challenge. I've got 3 teenagers in this house and it is a constant challenge for sure.
Yeah. So that was fun though.
So did you and your husband find work right away when you came
to Canada? So my husband pretty much found, because he had a really great job. And because of the timeline, and we had to move here, otherwise that window would disappear. So they didn't have a posting for him. He worked for ExxonMobil at the time, and they didn't have a posting for North America. So he had to resign. And so when we moved here, he had no problems, and still now, no problems, because, when you're good at what you do, and then you're sought after wherever you are. So it was pretty good. Although we had to travel a lot out of Kelowna. I mean, Kelowna itself, can be pretty challenging, at times. But you're always going to find something if you really want. Right.
Yes. Now, at some point, you became a yoga instructor.
Correct. I was actually a yoga instructor before I moved here.
Okay. In Dubai?
Yes, in Dubai as well.
And how about South Africa?
So in South Africa, I was just getting into it. Okay. So I actually went for 2 trainings, and I've been teaching yoga almost 20 years. So I came here and I was already a teacher. But of course, I was teaching a traditional hatha yoga. And then when I moved here, it was kind of a challenge for me with the weather, because I was always used to having warmer weather. So when I came to Kelowna, I was like, in April, I was still freezing my ass off.
All right.
I was like, what are these people talking about? This is like freezing, because it's so beautiful.
Right.
I'm like, this is like winter for me.
Right.
So it took some time to adjust. And actually, this friend of mine that I had, which I told you about, that I knew in Dubai, she lived here briefly for a few months, actually, when we first moved here. And she invited me to come with her to this hot yoga class. It was a Bikram Yoga class. And so it was in the heat, and I really loved it. Yeah. And so I started practicing that like 5 times a week. And then not long after that, I went to the teacher training for that. And so I've been teaching Bikram Yoga in this community 10 years.
Nice. So tell us a little bit about the different types of yoga. So you mentioned Hatha and Bikram.
Yes.
What is the basics of
Hatha
those?
yoga and Bikram yoga is not really different, because Bikram yoga consists of Hatha yoga postures. The only difference is that Bikram created the heat and the humidity in the room, and he also has mirrors. So you have to look at yourself in the mirror. And he also created a dialogue. So the teacher learns the dialogue for the 26 postures, and you just look at yourself and do the postures.
I see.
Whereas in traditional Hatha yoga, you have no heat per se, and you also don't have a dialogue per se. You just have the postures, and the teacher, for the most part, is demonstrating. So you're watching more the teacher and doing.
I see.
So that's the difference. And then Bikram yoga, Bikram created his own sequence. So there's I don't know, there's lots of yoga postures, but Bikram took 26 out of that and created a sequence.
I see.
Yeah.
What's the idea behind having a sequence? Is there
very important. Very important. Yeah. So usually in Hatha yoga, we all learn about warming up the body a little bit. Then we can really work, and then we cool down the body. So that's how it goes for, I think, most exercises, right?
For sure.
Yeah, Bikram Yoga is very, very unique in the way he created it, because Bikram himself was very knowledgeable about the body.
Is that the person's name?
Is the person's name, yeah.
Okay.
So he'd been practicing yoga since he was like 4, because from India, and
Is it very common in India?
It is quite common, yes.
Yeah.
So, and then, and his teacher, his guru, was also very knowledgeable about the body and so forth. And then his teacher's brother was really a very well-known yogi. And so, so that was the realm that he was involved in. And so I think, and now he's 75 years old, Bikram, so you can imagine all the knowledge and just, expertise that he has.
Yeah.
So he came to America, and he brought this yoga with him, and he introduced it to the West. And so now whenever you hear hot yoga, it's really, they all come from that line.
I see.
Of he started the heat, he started, introducing all that technique and style. But the real thing about Bikram yoga is in that how we design the sequence. So basically every aspect of your body is going to get a benefit. So it starts with a breathing exercise that warms up your body from the inside out, using and expanding your lungs. And then, he goes through each and every single bone, ligament, you name it. When you are finished with the 26 postures, your whole body received fresh, high-speed, nutrient-rich blood.
Yes.
So every system in the body. And as far as I know, there isn't any other yoga sequence that does what Bikram does for the body. You cannot get that kind of workout in 90 minutes anywhere else.
So it's 90 minutes.
It's 90 minutes. So in
26.
90 minutes, you're going to go through your entire body from head to toe.
Yeah. 26
every system,
postures.
26 postures. Every system, every ligament, every bone in your body is going to be worked in this 26 postures. So some people say, okay, I want to go for cardio, and they spend an hour on that. Mm-hmm. Some people say, I want to go for stretching, and they spend maybe 45 minutes on that. Some people want to go do weights, and they, and so Bikram Yoga gives you everything in 90 minutes. Right. You can't get that kind of workout anywhere else.
Sounds great.
It's really good.
So when people say hot yoga, is that Bikram or not necessarily?
Yes, the thing, it's not necessary. In the past, like 20 years ago, yeah, that would have been the case. Right. But of course, like anything else, I mean, we see it everywhere in the world. Yeah. Like, you design something and people make their version of it, right? Mm-hmm. Like look at Apple phone, for example, and now everybody's, making the phones like the smartphone and so on, right? Or even Gucci bags. And do you know what I'm saying? So it's the same in yoga. It's exactly the same in yoga. So basically, most of the people in North America came through that Bikram process, if they're called hot, because that's where it came from. Right. And so it's just expanded, and so many people have taken some things out and added some things, and but of course for me there's nothing like the pure 90 minutes, proper sequence, proper humidity, proper heat. If you really follow that, you're going to get an amazing workout.
Right. So Mr. Bikram, he started when he was 4 in India.
He started doing yoga when he was 4. Yeah.
Interesting. Do you recommend it for children?
Oh, yeah. Children.
It's good for anybody,
right? Of course, yeah. So what we do with children is, let's say if they're like 5 or 8 or something like that, because children haven't developed the sweat glands yet at that age, right? So we let them do only half of the class, right? So the whole standing series for us, it's like a warm-up. So you're in that heat and you're like sweating and you're warming your body up. And it's okay for us because we have sweat glands, so we can naturally cool down, right? Yeah. But children, they don't have that. So we always recommend that they do half of the class. So they come in what we call on the floor series. And the floor series in Bikram Yoga is the real yoga. Because the standing series, according to Bikram himself, he says to you, this is only my warm-up. So now there you are 50 minutes later and you're dying and he tells you this is the warm-up.
Yeah, right.
So children for sure can do it.
Tell us some of the advantages of the heat. So when I've done hot yoga in the past, I love to have a cold shower after. Tell us what are the advantages of doing it.
Oh, there's lots of advantages for the heat. First of all, let's say you take a man and he's very tight, tight. And now he wants to try and do yoga. I was like, it's
hamstrings, like.
Oh my goodness, yeah. So the heat helps to soften the muscles, right? So that you can at least start to move into the posture. And so in yoga, anybody that teaches yoga will tell you this. When you try the yoga posture in the right way, even if you only have 1% of the depth in the posture, just even 1%, you're going to get benefits. But for some people who have these really, really tight bodies, they can't even begin to think that, I'm going to do that stretch, right? So the heat, first of all, is to help you so that you can start to access parts of your body that necessarily is not accessible to you, because you're so tight. Another thing for the heat is, so when you warm up your body, so the blood flows in a certain way in your body, right? Like, and as we get older, it gets a little, slower. And when there's areas in the body that gets, that is hurt or, so now the blood flow is not going there so well. So the heat helps you to speed up the blood flow. Okay. And then when we are doing the yoga, we are creating compression. So it's like a tourniquet effect. So you almost like you squeezing and turning the blood flow off to that particular area. And usually it's like for maybe the pancreas or the kidneys or, some kind of like internal tightening up and then release. Right. And it's like if you look at a hose, when you put the tap on and you just squeeze the hose like that, and when you open it, it just it comes out fast, right? Okay. With a rush. That's the same thing in your body. So the heat helps to also speed up the blood flow so that you can create the healing in those areas where, we are creating tightness or whatever disease, And the third thing that I would say about the heat is that it helps with detoxification.
Right.
So the skin is the largest organ, and a lot of toxins can come through the skin, right? So it's a huge detox. So that's why people, when they first come to a Bikram class, they might feel nauseous. They might actually throw up because so many toxins are coming out and your body is overwhelmed.
Right. And a person gets used to it.
Oh, yeah. Within the first 5 classes. I always say to people, don't judge it on the first or even second class.
Yeah.
Give it a good 5 classes and you will see. Because, yes, it's tough. And yes, you might not feel that great, but you feel amazing afterwards.
Yes.
And I've heard so many people say, like, I couldn't sleep well at night. And then when I started practicing Bikram Yoga, I would sleep like a baby.
So true. So true.
And healing the
hydration is important.
Exactly.
You probably don't want to come in, you've been drinking a lot the night before.
That's up to you if you want to hurt yourself more.
Right?
Yes.
What about food? How long before you start a session should you stop eating?
Yeah, and I think with yoga, see, personally for me, for me, my personal preference is to have no food in my stomach. So for me, it's great to get up in the morning and do my yoga. So it's like, but if I didn't have a choice, then I had to come at night, then I would say I need at least a good 3, 4, 5 hours.
So you're totally empty.
Correct.
Yeah.
But everybody is different. And I think some people have this condition where their blood sugar levels don't do well if they don't eat, But all this stuff will improve because when you do Bikram Yoga, you're working on every cell, every ligament, every bone, every system in your body, every organ gets every day worked on. So you're improving your entire body. Not just you improving on the organs themselves, but you're also improving on how they interact with their counterparts. For example, heart and lungs, pancreas and kidneys and so on, right? So they're creating this better communication because usually what happens is if there's a problem in one area, then let's say the lungs are telling the heart, well, you're not pumping enough blood, and the heart is telling the lungs, well, you're not giving me enough oxygen. So they're fighting with each other. Right. And it's like, yeah, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
So it's like, it's really like, that's it. Right. So it improves all that stuff.
Yeah, definitely. So, and how did he develop the 26 postures? Was it just experimentation?
Yeah, I think it was over time.
Years?
The story that he tells is really unique actually because he was living in India at the time, and his job was because in India, like how it is becoming a little bit here now as well, is like the yoga posture is like a medicine. So when people came to the yoga school because they were sick, they had some ailment, and so he would prescribe a posture for you. Like if you had high blood pressure, if you had this, they would, and that's been a thing that has been going on since 5,000 years in India, So basically, he discovered that this is going to take him his whole life, and he's never going to reach that many people. And he also could see from what people were coming up to him was the ailments were almost, most people had the same kind of ailments.
I see.
And then he decided that we would put a sequence together where you'd take on all these problems. It's like a super pill. Right. And we would also create a classroom where 50 people can come instead of me giving one person. And that's how we came to this.
Very neat.
Through his experience.
Yeah. That's excellent. So what is IRT?
Okay, Integrative Reprogramming Technique. It's very simple. We all understand energy. That energy is everywhere. Energy cannot be born. It cannot be destructed. It cannot be divided. Many people talk about God consciousness, or they talk about our higher self, all that, or they talk about an intelligence. You can also say energy.
Right.
Like whatever people want to call it, it's all energy. So what happens to us as human beings is like we decide to come and have this experience here, and we pick a mother and a father, say, and we have an upbringing, and we soak up everything in our environment, right? Those first years, we are just soaking everything up. What our parents do, what our siblings do, what our society, does. And some of those things help us and some of those things hurt us. But we don't really know that. And so our entire life, we are making decisions based on many of those things that we learned in those early years.
Right.
And some people come and say, well, I don't know why my life is in this situation, or I keep attracting this kind of relationship and so on. And basically we can trace it back to many things that we learned in our environment, conditioning.
Right.
Yeah. So IRT is basically going to help you to identify many of these habits and patterns, right? So if you come to me and you say, oh, I can't hold on a relationship, then we're going to look at, okay, well, why is this so? Because you are the one that's creating everything in your life and you are attracting everything. Why do you keep attracting this, right?
Yes.
And then we can trace it back. And so the integrating part is to understand that, okay, I saw that behavior there and I held onto that belief system, and now that is why I'm attracting this. But if I could change my belief system about that event or that thing, then I can become free so that I stop attracting that. So it's literally, lots of people also call it a blockage, blocked energy. So maybe you had a traumatic event in your life and you don't even know because you just had to bury it to move on.
Right.
But it's still there and it's festering. And you keep coming down that same place. It's like I'm ending up here again because it's unresolved.
I see.
So it's basically a way to let go of what doesn't serve you anymore, and also to kind of, in a way, look at why I created this belief system. Because there's always a good reason. Like when you're 3 years old, I think that, adults look like gods to us because we're just so tiny. And so, we are afraid of some of the things they say, but we can also take it out of context because we're looking through the eyes of a 3-year-old. And I think we all have these memories, especially with our parents, where, I can tell you something personal. Like when I was 12 or 14, my mother had promised me something that she was going to get. And I waited. To me, it seemed like a whole lifetime. It was like maybe a month or two. And on the day that she said she was going to give me this thing, she just turned around and said she couldn't do it. And I was devastated. And do you know that my mother did so many great things for me? But what did I remember? That thing that I was so disappointed, okay? Because our mind has this flaw in it that something negative affects us nine times more than something positive. Wow.
That's interesting.
Very interesting.
That explains
total
a lot of
sense,
things.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah, totally. So how did it affect you?
So what I'm saying is that when I started to work on myself, that's why this is my job, what I do, because it was my experience of how I healed my own life.
I see.
And so basically when I started to work on myself, I thought, how silly, like that I would keep something like this against my mother when she did so many wonderful things for me and continue to do such wonderful things for me, to just be there, to be this person in my life, and so I was able to let go of that memory because it wasn't as bad as I made it out when I was 14. Right. But until I actually challenged it, it would still be there if I didn't deal with it.
Right.
And that's what I do in the Integrative Reprogramming Technique. I allow people to understand that they created this thought about a situation. But if maybe this situation, maybe my mother was bad, let's say, but when I change my thought about it, that frees me.
I see.
It has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with me. So I can only live my life. I cannot live her life. So when I let go of my thinking pattern, then I see. And that's the way we want to live in the world.
So how does it work in a practical sense? So do you talk? Is it like talk therapy?
Yeah, so basically people come in and, there's obviously some few processes that I use, but, the crux of the matter is we basically are going to take that trip back into why you have this belief system.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go there and you have to release that. You have to do it.
Right.
Because you made it.
Now, let's say I said to you, okay, now I understand what happened. And I understand I've got, not a helpful view of that thing. I've taken it out of context. Correct. I see it, but it's really hard for me to let go. How do you let go?
Yeah, well, basically, I have a technique where we are going to use some words that's going to allow you, because you see, our words are very powerful. Very, our thoughts create what we see, what we do. Right. So we have to be careful what we do with the thoughts, and we have to be careful how we use the words.
Right.
So when you bring awareness to your words, it's like 100 times more. So if somebody says to me, that person did this to me 10 years ago and it made me feel like this, we're going to use some words to go there, and we're going to release that.
I see.
And through just being aware of every word that you're saying and understanding that we are energy, I'm asking the universe to help us here. So the energy that is blocked is now being set free.
Nice.
It's really that simple.
How long does it take typically?
Just a couple of seconds.
Really?
Yes. I usually, when I do talks on my book and when I do book signings, I usually do it in groups, in sessions, and just say to people, just to bring to their awareness something that was painful for them, but of course it has to be done in a setting that's with love.
Right.
Like people have to feel supported, because it can be very vulnerable for people to go back to a place that's hurt them, so deeply. So it has to be done with reverence and with love. So that's why I don't just do it anywhere. Right?
Yeah.
But since you're asking, it's literally just holding space for the people to say, this is a safe space where you can bring that into the forefront and you can say, okay, I want to release this. Because just like how I explained it with my mother, yes, my mother made an action, but what I held was about me. Right. When I release, it's about me. So when I'm keeping pain, maybe somebody abused me, did something really bad to me. They maybe did that, but I'm holding on to something that if I let that go, I become free. Forgiveness is not for the other. Forgiveness is for you.
Right.
Yes.
That's
right. You can never understand why people did what they did and how it affected you. Only you can make a difference of how you will continue. Right. Do you want to continue with that, feeling the hurt and the pain? Or do you want to actually become free and let them deal with their pain and their hurt?
Right. Very interesting.
So that's my work with Integrative Reprogramming Technique. It's a beautiful, simple technique that helps people. And I think mostly what I find when I have sessions with people are completely unaware that they have the power to change it.
Right.
It's like, what? Yes, you have the power to change it.
It's really liberating.
We always think that we stay the victim. It's not true.
Right.
At any given moment, you have the choice to become free when you take your power back. So when somebody has done something to you and you have left it in isolation or buried it, it's like you have given them permission and you continue to give them permission to hurt you.
Right.
And at any time, you can take that power back. But you have to make a choice.
Yeah, definitely. Tell us about this beautiful book here that you brought.
So it's going to tie in nicely to our conversation. So the Self Repair Toolkit. So this book came really about because, in my day-to-day life, just similar to actually Bikram, I realized that I could probably see like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, maybe 8 people in a day. It's so limited what I can do. And I thought if I took some of my techniques that I used during my sessions and I put them in a book, that people would be able to access it at any moment, even if I'm sleeping. Like they can get the book and they can start just doing the processes. Right. Because it consists of 12 tools. That's really cool to help you, because different things stay very hidden within us. And until you actually are asked to look at them, they can just be hiding.
Yeah.
So out of that,
interesting tools.
Exactly. So out of that came this book, wanting people to have access to some tools, even if I'm not available.
Makes sense. Yes. Where does this book?
So the book is on Amazon.
Amazon.
So you can get it on Amazon.ca and Amazon.com, and of course in the in Europe as well. So yeah, people can buy it on Amazon.
We'll put links to it. Of course,
thank you.
In the show
thank
notes.
you so much.
So
Yeah.
That's fantastic. Well, I asked all the questions I wanted to.
Right.
Is there anything else you wanted to cover? And I will edit this redundant.
Yes, of course. Well, actually, no, I think we covered it very well. I think you beautifully brought like the whole thing just, meshed together. It's really wonderful. Yeah.
Right.
And we said obviously some nice things about Kelowna. And we also used, it's the fabric of life. Like what brings us together and what we share with our community,
Yeah.
No, and I mean, I could have added a little bit about Kelowna. Like when I first moved here, I really didn't like it because it was so different. Yeah, it was so different for me from
culturally,
having everything, like from coming from this big city lifestyle where I had everything to this like basic Kelowna lifestyle. Because Kelowna actually, over the last 10 years, it's got so much better. And I always say that's because of me.
Definitely, you're a key factor.
Right, exactly. Sure. And but the first year and two that I lived here, I struggled a little bit, to first weather and a little bit culture, and also a little bit, I didn't really have the things that I loved doing. Like Vancouver was more the city, but actually, my husband and I together decided that we didn't want to live in Vancouver because it rains too much, right? So we didn't go to Vancouver. But when we lived here, I kind of missed a little bit that big city thing because I came always from big cities. And, but it was very interesting because I had the yoga that I did 5 times a week. And I also had a guy and he still does a deep tissue massage for me. And I used to see him a couple of times a month. And I remember one time I was on the bed and he like really kills you, and we're talking and, of course he knows that I didn't like it so much because it's like different. And he said to me, well, what would make it better for you? And it was like, boom. I'm like, of course, what will make it better for me? I started teaching yoga. I started running retreats. I started doing the IRT. I did all the things that I loved. And I just brought it here.
That's wonderful.
And then I loved living here.
I like the saying, I'm not sure where it came from, but I always say, instead of dreaming of a vacation, build a life that you don't want
to take a vacation
escape.
to.
Yeah, exactly. That you don't want to escape from.
Yes,
right?
yes.
So it sounds like you've done that.
Kelowna has, it's very beautiful for me, Kelowna, because I think for me, I think I grew up here because I think I was kind of a spoiled brat. And then when I came to Kelowna, I was like, okay, you need to dig in.
Right.
Right. Yeah. And so having done that, and it's like that even in a marriage. Like, I've been married it's going to be 22 years.
Wow.
But I mean, it is the same. Like you have to dig in. Yeah. Because you can't find the good if you don't go through the not so good.
Right.
It's like you can't get to the heaven before you go to the hell. And I think sometimes for people, it's like when we're going through the hell a little bit, we want to escape and run away. But you're going to find it again and again because the hell really doesn't exist except when you go through it.
Yeah.
Right? Then you see it that, okay, it was an illusion. But if you keep running away from it, the illusion will always stay real.
Yeah. So true.
So Kelowna has been good that way for me. It's a good place.
Awesome. Deb, who would you like to nominate to come on the show? Oh, yeah.
So I know a very lovely lady. She's a singer.
Yes.
And her name is Olga Poreda.
Right.
Yeah. Poreda. And I will give you her contact information. And so she has the voice of an angel. And hopefully when you interview her, she can maybe sing something.
I've had a few people do it. I've had a few singers, and it's always a great treat.
So she sings with her band here, I think. But like I met her a couple of years ago at a dance, a mandala dance movement, and she was doing the singing. And I was just like mesmerized.
Awesome.
So beautiful. So I think she will be a lovely person to interview on your show and, further enrich the experience of Kelowna for people.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I've had a great time talking to you.
Thank you. Me too.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Newtown Big Dreams podcast with your host, Luke Menkes, and his authentic guests. And we love our listeners and hope you subscribe now to learn more about the amazing journeys of our incredible guests who relocated to find a new town, big dreams. And remember, make your dreams big.